The Caldrex armada stretched across the void like a swarm of metallic locusts, 3,000 warships strong. Each vessel bristled with plasma cannons and kinetic accelerators, their hulls scarred from 100 conquered worlds. Admiral Thexnor stood on the bridge of his flagship, mandibles clicking with anticipation as he surveyed the staging ground near humanity's outermost colony. "The humans have had 72 hours to respond to our ultimatum," he announced to his command staff. "They will surrender their mining rights to the Kepler Belt, or we will take them by force." The Caldrex had never lost a war. Their doctrine was simple: overwhelming numerical superiority, ruthless efficiency, and absolute commitment to victory. They had studied humanity's conflicts, observed their civil wars, their petty territorial disputes, their fractured nations that only recently unified under a single banner. The Caldrex expected humanity to field a defensive fleet, perhaps 500 ships if they could muster them quickly enough. It would be a glorious battle. But the scanner array showed only one contact emerging from Earth's orbital shipyards. "Surely their sensors are malfunctioning," Thexnor muttered, his confidence wavering for the first time in his 30-year military career. The human vessel wasn't even particularly large, barely a kilometer in length, modest by capital ship standards. Its hull was a patchwork of different materials: titanium alloys, carbon composites, and sections that seemed to shimmer with an almost liquid quality. No weapons ports were visible on its surface. No missile tubes. No obvious power signatures beyond a stable fusion core. "They're hailing us, Admiral," the communications officer reported. "Put it through." A human appeared on the view screen, a woman with graying hair and tired eyes, wearing a simple dark uniform devoid of military decoration. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the UHSV Prometheus. You've given us an ultimatum. We're here to respond." Thexnor's translator struggled with the subtle undertones in her voice. Was it resignation? Sadness? He couldn't tell. "Captain, you face 3,000 warships with a single vessel. Surely your leaders understand mathematics. Surrender now and we will allow your colonists to evacuate peacefully." "We understand mathematics perfectly, Admiral," Vasquez replied. "In fact, we're counting on it. You see, the Prometheus isn't a warship. It's a test platform." Humanity realized something important over the past century. War isn't about who has the most ships. It's about who can manipulate physics more creatively. Before Thexnor could respond, the Prometheus began to change. The shimmering sections of its hull rippled and expanded, unfolding like impossible origami. Structures emerged that defied conventional engineering, geometries that hurt to observe, angles that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. The vessel grew, but not in any direction the Caldrex sensors could properly measure. "What are they doing?" someone whispered on the bridge. "Sir, our targeting computers can't lock on," the weapons officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. "The ship's spatial coordinates are fluctuating. It's occupying multiple positions simultaneously." Vasquez's voice continued calmly from the view screen. "We call this a Kleinfield manifold. Your species discovered nuclear fission and thought you'd mastered energy. You developed plasma weapons and believed you'd peaked. But humanity had to learn the hard way. We nearly destroyed ourselves 3 times before we grew up. That desperation taught us to think differently." The Prometheus had now expanded to fill the entire tactical display, but not through physical growth. It was as if the ship existed in a bubble of twisted space-time, its boundaries undefined. Sensors showed it was simultaneously 1 kilometer long and 10,000 kilometers wide, occupying a single point and spread across the entire battlefield. "We wondered," Vasquez continued, "what would happen if we could manipulate the strong nuclear force the same way we manipulate electromagnetic fields. What if we could make matter forget its fundamental properties just for a moment?" A pulse emanated from the Prometheus, not light, not radiation, but something that made reality itself shudder. It washed over the Caldrex fleet like an invisible wave, and 3,000 warships simply stopped. Every fusion reactor shut down simultaneously. Every plasma conduit went cold. Every computer core ceased processing. The mighty Caldrex armada became 3,000 inert coffins drifting in the void, their crews alive but utterly powerless. Your weapons, your engines, your life support, all rely on nuclear forces holding atoms together in very specific ways, Vasquez explained. "We've just convinced those atoms to take a temporary break. Don't worry, the effect is reversible, and your emergency oxygen supplies will last 48 hours. Plenty of time for rescue. Thexanor stared at his dead console in horror. Around him, emergency lighting flickered on, powered by chemical batteries unaffected by the human weapon. This is impossible. The energy requirements alone should be impossible, yes. But humanity spent 2 centuries solving the impossible. We built cities underwater and in space. We cured diseases written into our genetic code. We taught sand to think. And when we finally stopped fighting each other long enough to focus, we learned to ask better questions. Not how do we build bigger weapons, but how do we make conventional weapons irrelevant? The Prometheus began to fold back into its compact configuration, the reality-bending effects dissipating like morning fog. Your fleet will be towed to a safe distance from our colonies, Vasquez continued. Your governments will receive detailed technical readouts proving this wasn't a fluke. We can do this again anywhere, anytime. And before you consider seeking revenge, know this. The Prometheus is one of 12 such vessels we've constructed. The others are already deployed at key strategic locations throughout this sector. She leaned forward slightly, and Thexanor finally recognized the emotion in her eyes. It wasn't aggression or triumph. It was exhaustion. We don't want war, Admiral. We've had enough war to last 1,000 lifetimes. But we've learned that peace requires strength, and strength requires innovation. Go home. Tell your leaders that humanity isn't interested in conquest or domination. We just want to be left alone to build, explore, and grow. But if anyone threatens that peace, they'll learn what happens when a species spends its childhood learning to split atoms and its adolescence learning to break reality itself. The transmission ended. 48 hours later, Caldrex recovery ships arrived to tow their paralyzed fleet home. They found every vessel intact, every crew member alive, and tucked into each admiral's quarters a simple handwritten note. Next time, try talking first. Humanity. The war that never was became legend, and the Caldrex, once conquerors of 100 worlds, became humanity's staunchest advocates for peaceful coexistence, because they understood something that no defeated species ever had before. They hadn't lost to superior numbers or better tactics. They'd lost to a species that had weaponized curiosity itself.